On today's show, the Cavs are back. We're going to talk about their blowout win over the New York Knicks and so much more on this edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show via YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button on this video. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 in bonus bets for new FanDuel customers when that first $5 bet wins. The Cleveland Cavaliers on Wednesday night squared off with the New York Knicks and won 124-105 in a game that was really the tale of two different halves. In the first half, maybe not the entire first half, and I do want to talk about the run that the Cavs went on to close out the first half in a second, but the Cavs, I thought, came out in this game in a way that I didn't expect them to. And I have been saying on this podcast for the past several weeks, when the Cavs play New York, I really think that that's going to be the point where they look like a team that turns it on. And yeah, I thought that they looked good, maybe not great against the Clippers on Sunday. I thought that they played better than the final score was, but it wasn't like some complete Cavs victory on Sunday afternoon. But I expected them on Wednesday against the Knicks to come out and look great for 48 minutes. And they didn't do that. They did not look great for 48 minutes. But what they did do was they looked awesome. They looked great in the final 24 minutes, probably more than just the final 24 minutes. I think like the last 3 minutes or so of the first half, they looked great as well. And I was surprised that they didn't come out with more energy. I was surprised that they didn't necessarily look locked in defensively. I thought New York was able to get a lot of the stuff that they wanted to do offensively and give them credit to. I mean, OG Anunoby in that first half for the Knicks, he had 19 points. He was fantastic. I thought Karl-Anthony Towns was really good, but those guys did get into a little bit of foul trouble. Give the Cavs credit for that. I mean, at least for OG's fouls. Karl, as somebody who once upon a time covered Karl when he was a member of the Wolves, Karl will pick up some really silly fouls, and I thought he did that in the first half of this game on Wednesday night. But the Cavs took advantage of that. They closed the first half on an 8-2 run, and that cut what was, at one point, a 15-point lead for the Knicks down to 7. And then the Cavs come out in the second half, and the Cavs looked like the Cavs again in the second half. I think that was probably, and it wasn't great. I thought it was really good, but they didn't hit shots the way that the Cavs hit shots offensively when they're really rolling at their best. They weren't that, but they played defense, I thought, spectacularly in the second half. They held the Knicks, I believe it was, to 45 points in the entire second half. And, some of those came in garbage time at the end, like when the starters checked out. It was a bigger deficit than what the final score actually was. I thought the Cavs were lights out defensively in that half. I thought they did a good job forcing turnovers. I thought they did a good job forcing the New York Knicks into some difficult shots. And then on the other end of the floor, I thought Darius Garland had a great game. I thought Donovan Mitchell was awesome in this game, not just with the scoring where he had 27 points, but a lot of the little things too, the rebounding, the physicality is the thing that Kenny Atkinson pointed to when talking about what Donovan Mitchell does aside from just filling up stats in the box score. And I thought all of that was on display, particularly in the second half. And both Donovan and Darius spent time on DeLon Wright, who is playing point guard right now. And yes, the Knicks are without Jalen Brunson, and that takes a little bit of the shine off this win. But I think this is just so much more about how the Cavs played rather than the opponent they played against. Like, I think if they would have done this against a playoff team in either conference, that you would kind of feel the same way, because it's not about the opponent. Unless you start talking Boston or OKC, then it becomes, the opponent matters. But I think everybody else that's just in the playoff picture in either conference, it's more about who the Cavs are and less about who they're playing. And I thought that's what the second half was. So Darius and Donovan, to get back to that point, they spent time defending DeLon Wright during this game, and they were picking up DeLon for 94 feet. They made life difficult. It started with them. They made life difficult on New York's offense. And that was a really important thing because in the first half, the Knicks were able to get to a lot of the spots they're comfortable with. And yeah, some of what the Knicks did in the first half was a little bit shooting above their heads. Like they shot the ball well from beyond the arc. They were 10 of 21 at halftime. OG Anunoby was 5 of 6 from deep. Josh Hart hit a couple of threes. But that was something that I don't think was ever going to keep up. But the Cavs still needed to play with a better physicality. Kenny Atkinson, one of the things that he pointed at that he did not like in the first half was the lack of off-ball physicality, kind of giving the Knicks that freedom of movement that good defenses really do a good job of restricting. And I do think that the Cavs can do a better job of that. Certainly didn't do a great job of that in the last month. But in the second half, I thought, did everything defensively well. There was Jared Allen's block on Karl-Anthony Towns. I thought Evan Mobley had some really nice moments. I thought the Cavs did a really good job of just about everything in the second half. They looked like the Cavs again. And I don't think that this is some coincidence. And the reason why I have been pointing at this particular game as sort of the benchmark, or not a statement game, because the Cavs are, I just think, they're a much better team than the Knicks. They're in a different place than the Knicks. The Cavs are a championship contender, and I do not believe the New York Knicks are. I just don't see the Knicks have not beaten them. They've not beaten Boston, and the games have all kind of looked like this. Maybe that first one in New York earlier in the season didn't look like this. Maybe the next one next week in New York won't look like this, because I just don't see how that game is going to matter for the Cavaliers. So I don't view them as some championship contender, but they're still a good team, even without Jalen Brunson. They've done a good job of keeping their head above water, but I haven't viewed this as a statement game because of that. Because as I've said, this is not about the opponent. It's about the Cavs. And the Cavs had not been playing Cavs basketball for a little while now. And I think a lot of that, more than they've probably let on, has to do with what the schedule has been, has to do with what the rest situation has been, has to do with the fact that they haven't practiced lately. The fact that Tuesday's practice was the first practice they had at home since February 9th. All those things matter. So I did, and I have expected this for weeks. Now, I expected the Cavs to look the way they did in the second half for a full 48 minutes. And maybe part of it was they've been in such a rhythm of playing every other day, or, back-to-back days, that they took a little while to knock rust off, I guess. And maybe that is something, if you do want to find a thing to nitpick and say, oh man, well, when they play in the playoffs, they're going to have a week off between games. They could be rusty in that game one matchup. Sure, like that's possible. I don't know. But they were rested, and they got back to doing the things that make them great, even if they didn't do all of them, because they didn't shoot the ball at the same level that they've shot the ball when they're really clicking on all cylinders. They were just 12 of 37 from three, but they did all the other things. Donovan Mitchell was awesome. Evan Mobley, I thought, had a strong second half. It wasn't necessarily his best game, but I thought he was good in the second half. Darius Garland, I thought, looked like Darius Garland again, even if he didn't shoot the ball well from the outside. Jared Allen, awesome. Again, I think that of the guys that having a couple of days off benefited, he was probably near the top of it. I thought DeAndre Hunter was really good. We're going to talk about him in a second, and playing with the starting five, because I think that is an important thing that we did see a little bit of, and that was a big deal in this game. So we will get to that in a second too. Isaac Okoro looks really good. Like the Cavs just looked like a team that was refocused, refreshed, ready to go. And this is what I expected this night to be for the last several weeks, because you look at the schedule and it's a lot of time away from home. It's a lot of games in a short time span. And this was the end of it. This is why the team wants to be playing their best basketball at the right time. There's no debating that. But the right time for every team is a little bit different. I don't think it was super important that the Cavs played their best basketball in March. I think it's super important they played their best basketball in May. Like when you say peaking at the right time, that's not March for a championship caliber team. Now, if you're a team that is fighting for playoff positioning, which the Cavs have not been doing for a while, or fighting to make it into the playoffs, which obviously has not even been a thought this year, March matters a lot. If you're a team like the Cavs, where your one and only goal at this point is to win a championship and you are positioned to give yourself a chance to do so, I don't want to say March basketball doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter nearly as much to you as it might other teams. And when that is added in with what the schedule was, I think that there was always going to be some slippage from this team in that month. But to see them come out and maybe not play the best first 21 minutes, I think that's fair to say. But the final 25 minutes for them, or no, the final 27 minutes for them, there we go. That's math. So much better. Like they looked like a dominant team against a really good team in New York. Again, I don't think the Knicks are championship contenders, but they're still a really good team, even without Jalen Brunson. Karl-Anthony Towns has been awesome. OG Anunoby has been playing spectacular basketball lately while Brunson's been hurt. That's how the Knicks have kind of stayed above water and kept themselves in that number 3 position in the Eastern Conference. But it didn't matter. Like, the Cavs played well enough for 27 minutes that I think it should be something that is reassuring to everybody, because I know that there has been, in some factions of the fan base, there has been concern, there has been worry, there has been, maybe some doubt about this team not actually being who they've actually been all year. And if you listen to this podcast every day, if you're an everydayer here, you know that is not how I felt. But I think that this game, for a lot of people, and yes, they have to follow it up with another good game. They play a bad San Antonio team on Friday, then they play a bad Sacramento team on Sunday. So they do have to follow it up with a couple of good performances. And I talked about that on Wednesday's show. And like, that should be the goal, that they should take these next few games pretty seriously and get themselves ready for the postseason. And then once the top seed is clinched, whatever you do is what you do, because that stuff's just not going to matter. But this should serve as reassurance. Okay, when the Cavs are rested, when the Cavs are, and they weren't fully healthy, still no Ty Jerome. We'll have an update on him later in the show. Dean Wade didn't play because of an illness. When the Cavs are rested and focused and maybe not away from home as much as they were, they're still a great team. Like, that has not changed, even if they hadn't played like it for a little while. I just think that this game, what they looked like in the second half, how dominant they were, I think this should be something that should be reassuring, that, okay, yeah, the playoffs are right around the corner and the Cavs are ready for it. There was a lineup in this game that made a really, really big difference. It involved DeAndre Hunter, and we're going to talk about it next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is, of course, America's #1 sports book, and the NCAA tournament is here. FanDuel giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before, because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It's $200 extra to use on everything from buzzer beaters to, well, no Cinderella stories. Cinderella didn't make it. She got lost somewhere along the way. She lost the map. No Cinderella. This weekend, Cinderella's gone. She don't live here no more. But buzzer beaters, the best teams, everything going on this weekend, as one team is going to be lucky enough to cut down the nets. Maybe you have your eye on, I don't know, one of the great teams, because from everything I've gathered, all 4 teams remaining are not just great, but like historically good. So one of them you certainly have to have your eye on, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props, and so much more. And these games still have 3 of them left to bet on. There's always something exciting. Plus, the NBA still here. Always something exciting to bet on with FanDuel. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. You're going to get your cash, which is what we all want. So visit FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action and NBA action, plus baseball. That's back, I hear. I haven't watched much, but it's back from what I've been told. So all of that and so much more over at FanDuel. Again, new customers, if you win your first $5 bet, $200 in bonus bets with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. There has been a lot of conversation lately about DeAndre Hunter and the minutes that he does or doesn't play with the starting five. So I do want to dive into that because that was part of Wednesday night's victory over the Knicks for the Cavs. But first, thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Also, make sure you check out the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter. It is your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free right now at lockedondaily.com. That is lockedondaily.com. DeAndre Hunter has not played enough with the starting five. Entering the game against the Knicks, he has played with Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, and Donovan Mitchell. So not the starting five, the core four. He had played 30 minutes with that group. He played another 3 minutes with that group on Wednesday night, and those 3 minutes came to close out the first half. When he entered, the Cavs were down by 13 in the second quarter with 3 minutes, or not when he entered, when that group came into play. So Hunter was on the floor already, and Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley checked in with 3 minutes and 5 seconds left in the first half for Max Strus and Craig Porter Jr. They were part of a lineup that did not work, dug a hole. I thought that the Craig Porter Jr. lineup that featured Javonte Green, Max Strus, Darius Garland, and Jarrett Allen did not work at all. Like, I thought that was one of the worst stretches the Cavs had, even if the score didn't necessarily reflect it at that point. I mean, it kind of did, but I thought that was not a good lineup whatsoever. So then Kenny goes to the core four plus DeAndre Hunter, and that group closes out the Knicks on an 8-2 run. And that cut New York's lead from, at that point, they were up by, I believe it was 13, down to 7. And that changed the game. Like, if that, and yes, part of that is Karl-Anthony Towns had to check out as that lineup was checking in. And then OG Anunoby picked up his third personal foul the very first possession the Cavs had the ball with that lineup. So he had to check out too. And we have, like, that has to be talked about. That is part of this. That is not the only reason this lineup was successful, but that's part of the reason why this lineup was successful. And that's just that is important context that matters during this discussion. But this lineup looked good again, and it has looked really good most of the time that it's been on the floor together. And I do think that this is something that is important for the Cavs and Kenny Atkinson and everybody and the players, part of it, that they can get comfortable with. I think it's an important thing to maximize the time it spends on the floor between now and the postseason, because maybe they don't need it in the first round against whoever they play, whether it's Orlando or Atlanta or Miami, who had a nice win over Boston on Wednesday that we're going to talk about coming up in a second, because that does affect the Cavs. Or Chicago, who's been playing better lately. They're not going to they won't need it to get past those teams in the series. They might not need it to get past Indiana or Detroit or Milwaukee in the second round, but they'll need it to get past Boston. And ultimately, that's what all of this is about. It's about getting to the conference finals and then taking care of business in the conference finals and trying to win a championship. And to win a championship, the Cavs are going to need this lineup. I feel very, very strongly that this is a lineup that needs to be successful. And I think that to maximize the potential of this lineup and maximize the chances of success for this lineup, getting it more reps in NBA regular season games and not just behind closed doors in practices, I think that's something that matters. I think that's something that we should see more of. And Kenny Atkinson was asked about this at practice the other day, and he talked about, wanting to see more of it. And we did see more of it, and it worked really, really well on Wednesday night against the Knicks. It changed the game against New York. I don't know that they win this game without DeAndre Hunter in that group. And Kenny was asked about this. Well, he was asked about something else, and he kind of talked about it. Like, he kind of went to it. And one of the things with DeAndre too that he brought up is he didn't necessarily feel like out west DeAndre had great energy. And I think that's actually a pretty understandable thing. considering DeAndre's life has been a bit of a whirlwind where you get traded from Atlanta to Cleveland in early February, and then the All-Star break happens, and he, was not in town during most of the All-Star break. And then since then, the Cavs have spent far more time on the road than they have at home. So I think it's fair to say that life has been a whirlwind, and it can be physically, mentally just draining for him. And I thought that Hunter looked really good, not just with that lineup that I've been talking about, but in general in this game. I thought he did a lot of really good things on both ends of the floor. And he had 16 points in the 25 minutes that he played. He was 6 of 11, 2 of 5 from 3. He hit some big shots that really kept the Cavs. I don't know if afloat is the right word in the first half, but he hit a couple of big shots that didn't help this game to not get out of hand early and keep the Cavs within striking distance is probably the best way to term it. Now, there are still other things he can do better, but I do think that, the fact that Kenny was willing to admit that DeAndre was somebody that didn't have great energy and he thought looked so much better after having a couple of days back in his routine, back in Cleveland, getting to be around the practice facility. Like, that is something that's not nothing. And I think the more that we see him, things are only going to get better there. And I do think that in these final 6 games that are left, having him play in every game that the starters play, because I would not anticipate that the starters, other than Jared Allen, because Jared Allen, if he can't play, will play. I would not anticipate the rest of that group playing in all 6 games. I think at some, whether it's, Donovan rests one game and Darius rests the next, or Evan rests the next, or all 3 of those guys sit out a game. So maybe of these last 6, you've got 4 games left where they will all play. I think in every game that the whole core 4 plays in the rest of the way, DeAndre Hunter needs to play minutes with them, because we've seen it be successful. It was very successful. It was a big part of the reason why the Cavs beat the Knicks on Wednesday night. I think it needs to be a big part of the reason why the Cavs can win the Eastern Conference, can win the title. But the more data that the Cavs can collect on that, I think ultimately will be a really, really good thing for them and something that they should look into doing if they can. I think it should be a priority. It's not priority number 1. Priority number 1 is winning and locking up the 1 seed. And we're going to talk about that next, because this win wasn't the only good thing that happened for the Cavs on Wednesday night. I will tell you exactly how you should be feeling about this next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings time snuck up on us. Again, the sun is out forever. It feels like it is glorious. It is beautiful. I love it. But sometimes you might not have the energy to get through the day because you're not used to needing all that energy to get through the day when, maybe you're still recovering from that lost hour of sleep when the clocks did change. And the extra sunshine, it means a lot of great things. It means more time outside, more opportunities for you to use up some of that energy that you might need more of. Well, luckily for you, 5 Hour Energy is here to give you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Maybe you're staying up late watching some basketball games. Big games happening out west just about every single night. If you want to keep an eye on the playoff picture in the Western Conference, you got to stay up late. Or if you're like me, don't tell anybody. I'd like to squeeze in a round of golf a couple afternoons a week. I'm going to try and play today. We're going to see if the weather holds off, but I'm going to try and play today. And that 5 Hour Energy is a big pick-me-up no matter what you are doing. So head on over to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack and have it delivered right to your door. You need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They are everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. Again, head to 5hourenergy.com. That is 5hourenergy.com. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And the magic number for the Cavs to clinch the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference is down to 2. It was 4 entering the day on Wednesday, but believe it or not, guys, the Boston Celtics lost the game. Their winning streak is snapped, and they lost at home. They were blown out by the Miami Heat. And remember when we talked about how the Cavs didn't look great against the San Antonio Spurs, their first game back from a long West Coast trip, and how difficult of a spot that is, and just winning that game is enough in that situation. Like, that's not necessarily a situation where I think the team needs to come out and play great. Just sort of surviving there is good enough. Well, that's the spot that the Boston Celtics were in on Wednesday night. They were coming off of a 6-game West Coast trip. Obviously, their West Coast trip went much better than the Cavs did, but they returned home, first game back, and they got their doors blown off by a bad team, because that stuff happens in the NBA. So now it is, I never thought this was anything to worry about. The Cavs were always going to be the 1 seed. The fact that Boston closed the gap as narrowly as they did to 4 games, impressive. They've played great basketball lately. Now the Cavs have a 5-game lead in the East with 6 games left to go. Their magic number to clinch the Eastern Conference top seed is down to 2. They need to either win 2 games, win a game, and Boston loses a game, or Boston loses 2 games and the Cavs can go winless. I don't know what's going to happen. My guess is that the Cavs will clinch the top seed in the Eastern Conference on Sunday. Both these teams play on Friday. The Cavs play San Antonio in San Antonio. I expect the Cavs to win. The Boston Celtics play at home against the Phoenix Suns. I expect the Boston Celtics to win that game. Then the Cavs play Sunday. I don't know if Boston plays Sunday. I've not looked at their schedule that far. I just looked at Friday. The Cavs play Sunday at home against the Sacramento Kings. I would anticipate the Cavs win that game. And at that point, they will have 63 wins, which Boston cannot reach. So there's nothing to worry about. And I posted this earlier on Wednesday because the NBA's play-in schedule came out Wednesday, like the dates of the play-in, and the second play-in game in the Eastern Conference, like to decide the 8 seed. So I guess the third play-in game technically is Friday, April 18th, which means that whoever earns the 8 seed will find out on Friday, April 18th. And that means they will play the 1 seed. That 1 seed is not going to play the 19th. They're not going to play a back-to-back after learning the night before what city they're flying to. They're going to play Sunday. So I tweeted out that, the Cavs, you can put it in your calendar. The Cavs' first postseason game is going to be Sunday, April 20th. Like, that is going to be a thing. There are plenty of people that said, if they can find a way to hang on the 1 seed. No, this was always going to happen. And I think after Wednesday night's action, it's just even further solidified. So their magic number is down to 2. A couple more final thoughts on the win they had over the Knicks. I thought Isaac Okoro played a really good game. He didn't shoot the ball well from 3. He was just 1 of 6 from deep, but I thought that what he did defensively was really good. I thought that the offensive rebounding from him was really good, where he had a couple of those. He had 6 rebounds in 23 minutes. He did have an expanded role because Dean Wade didn't play. I didn't think that Javonte Green minutes went all that well when he played in the first half. So I did think that Isaac Okoro had a good game. He had a couple of really nice cuts to the basket. He had a couple of really nice steals. Just overall, I thought he was really good. I thought Jarrett Allen was fantastic on Wednesday night. He finishes with 21 points, 8 rebounds. Like, you could say the rebounding stuff wasn't necessarily high enough, but I do think it was a good team rebounding day where Donovan Mitchell had 6, Max Strus had 5, Jarrett had 8, Darius had 4. Isaac had 6 off the bench. But Jarrett, 9 of 10 from the floor. Like, this guy has just been absolutely incredible. After the game, Kenny Atkinson called him the unsung hero of the team. I don't know that there are enough good words to say about what Jarrett Allen has done. The fact that he's played in every single game this year for the Cavs, I think is a very impressive thing. I think it's a really cool goal. But it is one thing that you look at and say, you know what, I do wonder if that catches up to him at some point. But I thought that on Wednesday night, he looked like a guy that probably needed 2 days off, and he got those 2 days off, and it worked out really, really well for him. Donovan Mitchell scoring, I thought was great. He was really efficient. 27 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 10 of 18 from the floor, 3 of 7 from 3. One interesting thing came out about Donovan on Wednesday, and it was the ESPN MVP straw poll. And maybe I'll talk about this a little bit more on tomorrow's show. But Donovan is 5th, according to the Bontemps straw poll. And I would be surprised. I'd be very surprised at this point if Donovan doesn't finish in 5th place in MVP voting. That would be the highest he's ever finished. There's only been 1 year in his career where he's gotten MVP votes. It was his first year in Cleveland. He finished 6th. I anticipate Donovan is going to finish 5th in MVP voting behind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, Giannis, and Tatum. I also think that for the first time in Donovan's career, he's going to be first-team All-NBA, and I think he very, very much deserves that. Even if his numbers say that he's having a down year, I think that he's more than made up for it with everything else he's done for this team, and the team success, I think, should matter there. Evan Mobley also got votes in that straw poll. I don't remember where exactly he was. I'd have to go back and listen again. But he did get votes for the very first time, and I think that is something that's going to be commonplace over the next couple of years. I think that Evan will probably get an MVP vote or two, like on 5th place on somebody's ballot. And next year, I expect him to finish a little bit higher. And I just think that's I don't know that he'll ever win an MVP, but I think he's going to be progressing towards being somebody that is maybe not, even if he's not in that conversation every year, he's around that conversation every year, the same way that Donovan Mitchell is. And I think that is obviously a really, really good thing. So that will be up on tomorrow's episode. I do want to talk about that. I want to talk about the award stuff, but I think that the MVP stuff for Donovan Mitchell is very well deserved and an interesting conversation to be had. So I will do that tomorrow. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs today your first listen, and every day your first listen. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. As I said, I will be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.